It is official.
It is official. So welcome to the Baker School Deans Forum. I am Shannon Mayer, Interim Dean of the J. and Patty Baker School of Business and Technology. And it is my pleasure to welcome Leslie Short in conversation with Elena Romero to our virtual stage today. Our host, Elena, is Assistant Professor in the Advertising and Marketing Communications Department here at FIT and TV correspondent for Latinas on CUNY TV. A journalist for the past 28 years, Elena currently tells stories of Nuestra Mujeres, covering a wide range of topics including health and wellness, parenting, entertainment, food, fashion, and Hollywood. She is also currently a full-time PhD student studying urban education with a concentration in leadership and policy at the CUNY Graduate Center. Her research interests include diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you for joining us today. Please mute your mic as this event will be recorded for the FIT Library Archives. And I now turn it over to Elena Romero. Elena, the stage is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dean Mayer. First of all, before we get started, I must thank you for this opportunity to be able to moderate this afternoon's discussion with Leslie Short entitled Power, Privilege, and Support: Leadership, Company Culture, Representation, and Building a Business. Thank you to all who have logged into our virtual event. As mentioned previously, this event is being recorded and will be part of FIT's Library Digital Archive. I've had the pleasure of knowing Leslie now close to 25 years and first met her when she worked at Macy's. In fact, I've seen her leadership skills firsthand, and while she's worked with a variety of companies, I believe today's career advice is something our students and community can benefit from. Leslie Short is a motivational speaker, a change agent, and business consultant. Her career spans a number of industries, from being a professional dancer to consultant to more than 500 Fortune 500 companies. The goal for her FIT talk today is to prepare students to enter the current and changing workforce, where conversations of diversity, inclusion, and equity are really upfront and center. So before we begin, I want for everyone to get to know her a little bit better. I've had the pleasure, as I've mentioned, knowing Leslie for quite a while. In fact, our interaction first started when I was a reporter at DNR and Women's Wear Daily. Leslie Short is the owner and CEO of the Cavo Group, a company focusing on expanding beyond the current culture for companies and organizations through diversity and inclusion lens. She is also the owner of KIM Media LLC, a multimedia agency that specializes in branding, events, designs, and weddings. KIM Media is the winner of the Weddings Wire's Bride's Choice Awards in 2011 through 2014, and Best of Brooklyn's Brooklyn Wedding Planner from 2012 to 2016. Leslie's eclectic career really began some 20 years ago as a trained alumnus of the Joffrey Ballet School, performing for national and international audiences. She lived in Europe for over 10 years and in Asia for 2.5, utilizing both her creative and business mind. In 1994, her company J Men's Tokyo was named 4th best business venture in Japan, where she produced, direct, and choreographed the first male review show in Japan, and also handled day-to-day business decisions and international press and marketing. She then successfully changed her career in 1996 when she returned back to the United States. Leslie began a television career working as associate producer for Montel Williams Show and music coordinator for 13 WNET in New York City. Her next move, this is where we got to meet, was at Macy's Department Stores, or Federated, as a special events manager, where she conceptually designed and executed dynamic events. Her client roster spans the world of sports, entertainment, and luxury lifestyle brands. Leslie in the past was Chief Operating Officer for both the Shark Group and Blueprint & Co. The Shark Group is a marketing branding company, and Blueprint & Co. is a co-shared executive workspace that Leslie handled full build-out design and operations, curated by Damon John, the star of ABC's Shark Tank. Leslie has since made them clients under her role as a corporate operations strategist. And she has worked with Daymond John for well over 20 years and spent 10 years working with him as his president of marketing, advertising, and PR for FUBU, the collection, and FUBU Entertainment. As a corporate operations strategist, Leslie gives companies a level of executive management without having to bring in an executive full-time in the role of chief operating officer. Leslie provides leadership, management, and vision necessary to ensure that the company has proper operational controls, administrative and reporting procedures, and people systems in place to effectively grow the organization and to ensure the financial strength and operating efficiency. Leslie has been recognized for her achievements by various organizations. In 2003, she was honored by Ebony as an outstanding woman in marketing communications, and by Today's Black Woman magazine with the Today's Black Woman and New Day Associates Award. Leslie was selected as a woman of influence by New York Business Journal in 2016, and she is also a member of the North American Advisory Board for the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer Council. Leslie has also authored a chapter in Inside the Minds, Marketing Benchmarks for Success, and contributed her insights to college textbooks. And of course, she is the author of this new book called Expand Beyond Your Current Culture, Diversity and Inclusion for CEOs and Leadership. In fact, Leslie will be raffling off an autographed copy of this book to one of our lucky attendees this afternoon. So again, I want to thank Dean Mayer for this opportunity. And at this point, fully welcome Leslie Short to the stage. Thank you for being here this afternoon.
Thank you. You promised you were going to read the short version. What?
By the way, that was the short
tired.
version. She has quite a list of milestones and accomplishments. And I wanted that to really be read in its entirety because it's important to understand how you developed your positionality in this space, right? And so what I'd like to do is kind of have you, and I know briefly, because the story could be quite long, to tell us about how you moved from being a ballet dancer to providing consultant services to Fortune 500 companies.
Listen, as a ballet dancer, you are used to being structured. You're used to paying attention to everything around you. You just can't be on stage. I need to know what lighting's doing, what sound's doing, what the orchestra's doing. It's really a 360 view of what you need to do on stage. So when I retired and opened up my theater, I had all those skills because I was the annoying girl that used to tap people. I'm like, can you show me how to run the camera? Can you show me how to do this? And they'd be like, oh, a cute dancer wants to learn. Meanwhile, I was taking those skills and developing them. And the same thing when the press start coming around for the theater, I didn't know it was PR at the time. I tell the story the way that I wanted to tell the story, and that would make sense for the community and culture. So when I came back to America, it was really about where are the holes here? What's the missing in conversations? And always be the one to be like, sorry, that doesn't make sense. Can we have a discussion on that? Do we not see that that's open? And so people would be like, okay, you lived out of this country, so you have a different global view on how things work. Come sit at the table and tell us how you've seen other things happen. And so that's always been a plus of being able to take in the transferable skills that I had in the cultural skills and bring them to everything that I do now. And I still look at everything from a global view, or, you know, from a city view, from a town view, from a state view, and not only industry, I look at all industries. So that's just been the gift of, I think, dance of, you know, they teach you how to look in one spot, but turn and go back to that spot. So that's that 360. That's how I view things.
Talk to us a little bit about your experiences that helped shape your positionality around diversity and inclusion.
You know, it wasn't called diversity and inclusion so many years ago. You know, it's gone through a progression of what it was called. But when women especially say to me, I'm the only one in the room, I'm like, big deal. I've been the only one in countries. Come on, like, let's have a real conversation. You know, when I lived in Japan, it doesn't make a difference what color you are, where you're from. If you're not Japanese, you're considered a gaijin. The best part is all the gaijins, all of us pull together, we create our own community, but you must live within the community and culture for which you are standing in. That meant for me, there was one Black young woman that was a model that lived there, and she left the week I moved in. And unless you're on the army base or, you know, some of the bases, I was the only one there. So I would go shopping and they would follow me. And I would be like, if you're going to follow me, then you're going to talk to me. What shoe should I buy? Is this cute? And I kind of built their trust by just having, not saying, hey, where do you go or what do you do? But saying, talk to me then. I want to know what's going on. Where do you hang out? And so all of that has been able to build into having it, like I said, a different outlook on how I approach things. You know?
I'm going to reference your book quite a bit, not because I'm doing the shameless plug to selling it, but because there are quite a number of gems here that I think everyone will find valuable. In your first chapter, you talk about and entitled appropriately, "What's in Your Bag?" Can you discuss what it's meant by that expression and how it relates to this afternoon's discussion?
At what's in your bag? What are you carrying? Having the title leadership is just a title. If you don't understand who you are and what you're bringing, I don't care what title anyone has. Where do you come from? Do you understand from where you've come from? Do you understand the advantage of that? You know, we all have that bag and you deep your hand down deep and you're like, where the devil did this come from? Why is this in my bag? That's part of the biases that we bring. It's also part of talents that we've forgotten that we have, that we bring. We look at what's in the middle or what's on top. So when I'm working with companies and I'm working with executives and I'm working with staff, I'm like, who are you? We all have value. What's your added value? And your added value is understanding what you bring to the table. And until we examine that, then we're always going to stay on the surface of what we think we know about diversity, what we think we know about inclusion, what we think company culture or culture should be. So it's taking that personal stock, that investment in yourself, to know how you invest in others.
So the topic for today, we've entitled it to be Power, Privilege, and Support, Leadership, Company Culture, Representation, and Building a Business. So before we even really digest what all that means, I want us to kind of define the terms so everyone is on the same page. So let's start off with, how do we define power?
It's not how we define power, it's how I define power when I work with people. Okay. So for me, power is knowledge. It's knowledge. Because I think we get too caught up on power being position. Now it is part of that, but it's the knowledge that you have. And that's regardless of where you are in whatever level you are, the knowledge that you have, no one can take from you. The knowledge that you continue to learn is a bonus for you. So power is knowledge.
How do you define privilege?
It's the flexibility of options or knowing how you can use your knowledge. Now, okay? Because when we think of privilege, what's the first thing someone says? Oh, I had to work my way through school. Everyone thinks it's money. No, privilege is having the time, having options, and having the flexibility to say, how will I use the knowledge that I have? How do I use my power? That's privilege when you have that option.
Support.
Support is taking your power and privilege and not turning it from yourself onto others. Okay, knowing that you have the flexibility, that you have the knowledge, and you do maybe have the dollars and the title to make things move, that you're going to now be able to share that with a person, place, people, or thing that needs additional help on whatever that is. That's support on just making an introduction sometimes. That's the support of saying, here, I know someone that can guide you where you would like to go. Support comes in different forms. Or it can just be somebody like, I have your back. Go for it. But taking that privilege and that power, that gives you all of that to give that support to someone else, to be able to share that.
The word diverse in relation to
Ah,
diversity.
we are all diverse. Every last one of us in these boxes are diverse. I don't care what culture you come from or where you come from. I don't care what, we all have on the same khaki pant. We are all diverse. So that's what I like to say. That's all of our differences, right? Diversity is race, gender, LGBTQ plus, disability, sites, seen and unseen, and veterans. It is what makes us up. It is from the culture, from all those things that come from us. That is diversity. You want me to keep going? Because I know you're going to go into an inclusion and equity next. I think I've lost Elena. So I'm going to keep going and go. Inclusion is not belonging. Inclusion is having a valid voice within the space for which you are occupying. Okay, that is inclusion. I don't want to belong. You belong to a book club. You want to be inclusive.
All right.
Be somewhere where you are inclusive. I kept going, Elena. I'm on inclusive. I know you're going to ask me later. You know me. I just kept going. These are all conversations at 7 o'clock in the morning. We just keep going. So, I was saying, and what we've spoken about before, inclusion is not belonging. It's inclusion is having that valid voice. And then equity is having access, is having tools, is understanding the system that can help you maneuver your way through. That's equity. I want to know, how do I get to move through? Can you show me that path? And then can I take a stake in it? Do I have a stake in it? Do you have a stake in it with me to share that equity? There's a difference of equality. Go ahead, Elena. I'll just keep going.
Leadership.
Leadership. Wow. It's like I said before, leadership is not a title. Leadership is an action. It's taking intent into action. It's taking your power, your privilege, and your support. And it's not about you. It's about, how do you motivate, change, shift the people that you're working with for the betterment of the mission. Because where we get caught up, that it's about us. Diversity, inclusion, equity, leadership, none of this is about the person. It is about, how are you extending this to others? How are you building that in? If you are a leader, then you are looking at it from a 360 lens. And even if you don't understand it, you understand that it's important enough to bring in the right people to help guide you and your staff to understand it and to build it. That's the difference of leadership.
And then lastly, company culture.
Oh, I didn't hear you. What was that one?
Company culture.
Company culture is not something that just happens. It's something you have to build. You have to work at it. You have to figure out, what is your mission? Who are the people that I have working with me? How do I want people to feel? How do I want people to understand that they have a route to promotions, that they have a stake in what we're doing here? So company culture, yeah, I remember out of college, I almost said beer and cupcakes, not it. We don't do that. Cupcakes and ping pong and all of those extra things. Yeah, that's great. That's atmosphere. That's not company culture. Company culture is knowing that if there are issues, that I have someone that I can speak to, that I know that I have a place within, that what I'm doing matters, even if someone's not patting me on the back every 2 days. It really is about coming into a space and going, I understand where we're going. And I feel good. I'm valued here. You have to build company culture in. It's bigger than just saying, oh, look at us. How are you making people feel? How are people moving? How are people seeing that office one day, or that cubicle one day, or that tenant, or that wherever we're working in the future, that there's a possibility to understand what that is and to be.
And is there a misconception that company cultures are fixed? Should they be always ever changing and evolving?
Look, you are fixed because you build your company culture, but like anything else, fixed and cemented are two different things. If you cement and say, this is all we do, this is who we are, we're not changing it, then there's zero growth. In order for, and I don't want people to think, oh, I'm going to shift my culture one day because this is the new trend, or this is the new buzzword. No, what is your mission? But within that, how do you continue to grow? And you notice I keep using the word mission, because most people go, here's our mission, here's our vision, and they never look at it again. All of that has to always be reviewed. That's something that every few years you have to review. We're now working in these boxes. If you had told us a year ago we would still be in these boxes, someone would have been like, nah, this is a couple weeks, we good. We gonna
Right.
figure this out. We haven't figured out how to get all our shots yet. You know, so we're still in these boxes. That means company culture needed to shift.
Mhm.
And what happened is some people forgot that the diversity, equity, and inclusion company culture conduct rules still apply in the boxes. That we're not going to talk over each other, that microaggressions are not acceptable, that picking, telling women that they have to have on makeup and a guy can come in their pajamas on a Zoom call, unacceptable, that racist and sexist comments will still no longer be accepted. So therefore, we always need to review our company culture and our code of conducts to shift with the times for where we are. We can't pretend like this is who we are and this is where we will stay. The foundation of who you are stays. How you maneuver has to shift sometimes.
I mean, you've touched a little bit upon this, but I went through a series of terms intentionally. Why do all those terms that I mentioned, why do they matter?
They matter if you're building a foundation of your company. Now, you can take all of those words and make them buzzwords. And you can do all the affinity groups and DEI committees and all of those things. But if they're not part of the foundation of your company culture, then you're doing segregation, inclusion on the side, trying to build these things. Plus, everyone goes diversity and inclusion. Well, they're two separate words. And you need to treat them as separate words. You have to build each of them separately together. But if you don't have an understanding of the words, then you're just doing check boxes. You know, let's think about it. For years, diversity was about race. That was the assumption. It's about race. And then it was like black and white. Well, race, number one, is not black and white. and diversity, I think I broke that out earlier. It's gender, it's LGBTQ, it's all these conversations must be part of it. And then you look at each of those segments underneath diversity and going, how are we building those pipelines? They're not special than others, but there has to be thought process. Otherwise, comments, things are happening around you and you go, I didn't even know. I didn't know there was a difference. I didn't understand that there was a difference. Words have meaning. And so to understand, if you're going to build it into your foundation, you must understand the words that you're using and how it affects not only yourself, but the betterment of everyone that's involved.
Is belonging the same as inclusion?
So you missed that when you went out. Absolutely not. You know, that's my pet peeve. And I'm going to tell you, everyone started using this word belonging twofold. One, before the pandemic, when they were trying to get rid of diversity and inclusion departments. I'm just going to call it. And so in the industry, all of a sudden, that word belonging start popping up. And I'm like, why is belonging popping up and diversity and inclusion disappearing, or diversity disappearing? Then the pandemic hit, the George Floyd murder hit, and all of a sudden diversity and inclusion came back. And like I said, belonging is a book club. You belong. You decide you're going to belong in a book club. I want to be inclusive. I want to be included within the space that I'm in. I want to have a valid voice. I just don't want to belong. Who just wants, that's like saying, I just want to be tolerated. No.
Let's get a little deeper here in the conversation. We've heard a whole lot about the Black Lives Matter movement. What about Black Lives Matter? And for some, what would you say that say, is it biased?
So can we take one step and add on to that?
Sure.
Because it also becomes about all lives matter and where that comes in. No one ever said all lives didn't matter. I would hope that would be a given, but I don't want to assume that, okay? The conversation was Black Lives Matter and what that meant. It is not a bumper sticker. It was saying my thoughts, my feelings, my skin, please see me. I matter as part of the conversation, as part of policy, as part of procedure, that I'm here and I want to be involved and I want to have a voice on how we are involved. Black Lives Matter, because it was coming out that there was killings coming left, right, and center. Is my life no better than anyone else's? And so that's where it was coming from. And it, you know, we're in media, it spins into a bumper sticker. And I always say, I'll make it personal. No one, if I go out on the street, no one knows my resume. Now, if I go down my street, everyone kind of knows who I am because I talk to everybody. But if I hit that subway platform, I'm just another girl that's standing there. And so we want, it's almost the call for no hate for our Asian brothers and sisters right now. The calls were different, though. I want to be clear on that. Black Lives Matter call was, we want action now. We want policy changes. We want you to hire Black. We want you to understand where we're coming from. Please see our point of view. The call for our Asian brothers and sisters are, will you stand in solidarity? Do you understand that there's a difference of call to action at the moment? Do you see us and will you stand with us? And so I don't want, when we're saying Black Lives Matter or no Asian hate, that they become bumper stickers. It is an awareness that we are on this journey together, though we are not all equal within it together. And I don't always like to use that word equal because none of us are equal. Let's just call it what it is. So you go for ice cream, somebody's getting a bigger scoop, even when the same person scooped it. Let's make it just that simple. I like to make some stuff really simple sometimes. So, you know, I will always say equity. I want the access in. And so that's what this is about. I don't want it to get lost under, you know, people will say race relations and diversity and inclusion. They're kissing cousins. They're not the same type of trainings. They're not the same conversation. And so the conversation is, how do we build pipelines for all those that have decided to be on our journey? So we don't forget that this is a full conversation and that we have to have the conversation about Black Lives. We have to have the conversation about no hate. And we have to have these conversations and the spaces for where we are so that we can actually continue to grow and shift policy, change policy, or build what we need to build, that there is an equitable community for which we all can see ourselves in.
How have corporations reacted to these movements?
Woo, okay, so you have some that have done it well. I want to say that. You have some that are very lost, and you have some that are completely performative. And when I say performative, that black box, and then everyone was putting a black box out on, and I said to some, do you even know what the black box means? And here's what I received. Oh, well, my colleagues did it, so we had to do it. And so I became my mother. If your colleagues jumped off a bridge, would you go jump off a bridge? You know, that you're following and you have zero context to what you're doing, yet you're putting it out there. The same thing with Juneteenth. Clearly, I'm a bad blood person. I never had a picnic on Juneteenth. Now everybody's having picnics in offices. I'm like, what are you doing? Figure out what your community is and who's your community and how you can make it better for the voices that are already in your community, and stop trying to run and catch, you know, like, so here's, okay, so you get me going now on this one. Here's my thing. Don't go hire or find a new Black friend, Asian friend, Indian friend, and bring everybody in and be like, woo, we're diverse. No, you're diverse, all right, but you have zero diversity. You aren't inclusive, and you haven't built the pathway to equity for them to survive and for them to be successful. So for the companies that has done it right, the commitments that they made, because you know everybody was running around writing commitments, were built into taking intent into action. And so for the companies that I worked with, the only reason I would work with them if they were going to build it that night. Part of the conversation had to be, what is your commitment past sending this to your PR people? What is the low-hanging fruit we can change in the next 2 weeks? And then we built on that. And I am so proud that one of my companies called me back the other day and said, we're on commitment 8 and it's building and we're growing, and thank you, because you made sure we were going to hold fast to this. So for the ones that really made commitments, we're starting to see the change. For those that put out a black box and put a commitment out, they're not doing anything. I love the commitment that one company put out, and someone on LinkedIn said, oh, you really should speak to Leslie. She can help you build this. And I went on their website, and the Black Lives Matter commitment was there, and it was a little white baby face. And I said, so you just put the commitment out and no one thought about the photo? Okay. Yes, you do need me. I don't know if you're ready for me. This is work. Building inclusion, building equity is work. The companies that I work with like hold their heads some days and like, we didn't know. We didn't know. We had to, one, examine ourselves, examine our policies, look at procedures, figure out how we make sure that leadership not is on board, stays on board, and is educated along with us as we take this journey. It's not easy. And it's a commitment to be committed. It's a commitment to be responsible. And it's a commitment to be accountable.
Why has it taken so long for us to even get to this point?
Several things. So, you know me, I'm always the 360 girl. Let's go back to culture. When people of color and Black folks get a job, 9 out of 10, they were taught from their family. Oh my goodness, you got the job. You go in that door, you keep your mouth shut, you keep your head down, and you do your work. Don't you go in there talking about race. Don't you go in there asking for things that's not yours. And that's what's happened. So you have all the chatter on the side of being unhappy, not feeling included, not having a voice, but never voicing it. Or if you voiced it, you were aggressive and you were doing too much and you were no longer there shortly after. We were all in these boxes and something egregious happened. And people picked their heads up and said, what is going on? This cannot be. From a humanity standpoint, this is not right. And the people that were told to keep their voices quiet said we could no longer be quiet. And we're asking leadership not to be quiet, but to allow us to work together to shift these narratives. So if you're going to invite, diversity diversity has to have a voice in the process of how they can succeed within. That's really building a company. That's building a culture. And so now people have realized, leaders have realized, companies have realized, organizations have realized, non-for-profits have realized. I have spoken from oil companies to climate companies, to entertainment companies, to business companies, to those with disabilities. Everyone goes, there's a voice in place for people. And if your people feel like they're included, guess what happens? They show up to work in good moods. Guess what happens? Your bottom line gets stronger. Who knew? People are the key to this. And so now people are understanding that people are important.
So how do we begin these uncomfortable conversations?
Knowing you're going to be uncomfortable and being uncomfortable in your uncomfortable moment. Because we're all coming at this from different views. And so to say to someone, my view is better, or your view is better, is unacceptable. I say your view is your view. And can we share our views together and figure out where there is a common ground? So when I'm in an office, I go, well, everyone's here. Everyone's working here are here because there's something they believe why they're here, right? There is that gym that has brought everyone to this place. Now, what is the gym that you add in? And what is the gym that you add in? Then how do we connect this? But there's a lot of self, you know, in one of the chapters I go, it's not about you. It's about what you're bringing, but what you're bringing may not always fit with everyone. So how do you have those conversations and say, wow, I didn't know when I said that. You took it offensive. Because there are things that are said that and done that sometimes people do not know is offensive because they haven't had the conversation and no one has said to them, when you say, I speak so well, as opposed to, oh my God, you're a great speaker and you're dynamic. I'm taking that a bit offensive because a school teacher used to only say that to the little black and brown kids. But how would you know that if we don't have these conversations? How do I know about your culture and what's important to you unless we share that? And so sometimes you have to really just sit. You know, that's one of the reasons I built my own bias quiz, because I didn't like what was in the market because it was too general. If you don't know your own path and what triggers, even though I know that's a trigger word, what triggers you or what riles you up, then you're not going to know it when you speak to someone, and therefore you can't be aware of the biases that you bring, because we all have bias. And so understanding them better is how we begin to shift the narrative of the conversation. Doesn't mean it changes overnight. It means sometimes when you go to say, you're like, oh, how are you thinking about this? And you hold your thought for a moment so you can hear someone else's. Interesting. I was thinking a different way. And then you go, well, can we figure this out together? Now, everyone's not down this road. I would say everyone's not on the yellow brick road and happiness. No, there's some people, it's like, this is who I am. This is how I was raised, and this is my culture. So you have to meet people where they are. And you know, my favorite word that I can't stand is the woke. I'm woke. I'm always like, where are you woke? What are you woke from? And now that you're woke, what exactly are you planning on doing about this? So if you can't answer those questions to me, let's go back to having a conversation on the fact that everyone is on their journey, understanding at different paces. And so that means we need to meet people where they are and not assume that you're so woke and think you understand social justice and racial justice and you're demanding all these things, that it's going to happen overnight. This disconnect of culture and understanding didn't build overnight. It has been a systemic way of just hiring. And look, we can say from gender, you know, it was led by men. It was led by white men. That's not saying anything bad. That's the reality.
I mean, we still
Women-
haven't passed the Equal Rights Amendment. I mean, I just had that conversation with Carol Jenkins the other night here at FIT. So
it's processes and procedures. And yes, we want things to change now. And yes, there's some things that should have changed a long time ago. Can we, you know, I would love in 2021, 2022, we stop saying the first, but Lord, we have to start somewhere. So if you're the first female dean, let's rock. Pick your hand up, pull somebody else, let's go. If we're the first astronaut, make sure that they have designed a suit so that there's more than one in one size. That's still amazing to me. That's all. You know, we need to be that. Do not be concerned if you're the only one in the room. When you're in the room, then have that valid voice that's in the room. When you're in the room, talk about others that you know you can bring in the room that can work solid with you for the mission. Those are the difference. That's how we have to approach this when we're sitting at tables looking, how do we expand diversity, equity, and inclusion? Again, just don't drop people in the room for the heck of it. But if you do get dropped in the room, get out of your own way, of your own ego. Am I the token? Okay? Be the token that has a valid voice in the room, that they have no choice but to bring others. Because we get so stuck in our way of, did they call me only because I'm this? Well, then somebody saw me, and guess what else you're going to see? You're going to see my amazing work ethic. You're going to see the talents that I bring. You're going to see all the things that I have to offer along this journey, because you let me in the room and now I have a voice.
I think now's a great time to talk about the 4 pillars of we and us.
The 4 pillars of we are us, the way that I look at that is diversity, inclusion, equity, and company culture. I do not believe you can separate them and be successful. So sometimes when I'm working with people, they're like, wow, you want to see our handbook? I'm like, I would like to see your handbook. I would like to see how you communicate between staff. I would like to see, I go through your social media. I go through events. I go through press. I look at all of that. And then sometimes I'm requesting to have small groups of conversations with different departments all mixed in, so that I can understand what is company culture, not from the eyes of leadership, but from those that are working and living it every day. And so that's how you build and understand. Instead of just throwing things at the wall, we can understand, where do we need to begin to build? Where's the shift? Because sometimes where we start and think we need, oh, we just need diversity, or we just need inclusion. Well, okay. Well, if you already have people in, let's talk about the diversity within. Let's talk about how we make this inclusive. Let's speak about, again, that equity access road. And let's speak about, what does your company culture feel like? What is it doing? Where is it going? What's its purpose? Again, is it segregation within inclusion, where you just have people in all these other little pockets, but no one is actually speaking? Departments aren't speaking to each other, and you're not building on each other. You know, Elaine, I used to say back in the day, the music industry, I love you, but PR is over here, marketing's over here, the artist is over here, the manager's over here, everybody's over here doing their own separate deals, and the artist is like this. What? Where'd that go? What am I doing? Because there was no connection. So we need to build these connections in order to grow.
So how does a company make diversity and inclusion a reality? What's at stake, and what could employees do to make it happen?
Again, I think what's happening now is employees have to speak up. But here's what I say when I say speak up. So let's be clear, because all leadership look at me and like, okay, now, Leslie, you going to be here answering all of this? Speak out with a purpose. Don't just go out wild going, we need this, we need this, we need this. What environment are you in? What are you honestly seeing that may be a pathway that hasn't been filled, and be able to have those conversations on how can we continue to grow this. I'm here and I'd like to be able to have a path. Can you show me what that is? Are there mentors that I can be working with to grow my career in this direction? Do you give mentors? Is there a leadership program? Can I actually call a professor that I'm really interested in that field and just have an informative information conversation with them to understand their path? May not be mine, but so I have a better understanding. So it's, again, that's access. That's the equity that you're giving. And so companies have to figure out, what is it that we can begin? I always call it the low-hanging fruit, that we can begin to change, that we can begin to shift, that is valid to the employees that we have. Okay, so when I'm looking at handbooks, I'm even looking at inclusive language. You know, the law in New York, what day are we on? March 25th, I think it's the 23rd it started, that all bathrooms must have gender neutral signs. I emailed every client going, I'm sure you're aware of this, but just in case you missed it, when you come back into the office, those gender neutral signs need to be up. That's my job, to also share laws and regulations with them. What I've been adding in handbooks and code of conduct is the Crown Act. And if you're not familiar with the Crown Act, it allows Black women to wear their natural hair in the office. It allows a man that has a beard, for either religious reasons or not, to be able to wear a beard, unless you're somewhere, of course, that things are going to get caught in machinery. That's a different conversation. But if I walked into a job and saw that the Crown Act is part of the handbook, that paternity and maternity is part of the handbook, that lactation is part of the handbook, and there is a rule for real that I can go do that, those are small hanging fruits that you can begin to invest in. Even for students to see that. Inclusive language. It's important, because you have decided your gender or your identity doesn't mean that you can decide it for someone else. So if they can actually look at paperwork, see invites that have inclusive language and go, somebody sees me and hears me here. Is there a student council that is working with the DEI committee? Is there a student council that gets to work with leadership every now and then? I'm not saying every week. Folks are busy. Everybody has enough stuff on their calendar trying to figure out how to get done what they need to get done. But is that something that can be built in so that there's an understanding? Because see, diversity and inclusion cannot be a Band-Aid, and it can't be a knee-jerk reaction for when something goes wrong, we're going to throw a committee at it, or we're going to just hire somebody to come in and do a bias training. No, it has to be an investment, not only with dollars, but with time, with that commitment. And we have to build it, sometimes slow. It's much slower than what people think. People are like, Leslie, give me a checklist. And I was like, if I could give you a checklist, we would be in this box, but my background would be Maui and a palm tree. That's what the checklist would be, because honestly, that's where I would be right now. So there isn't a checklist, because every organization and every company has to approach it differently. It's not a one size fits all.
So I think you've touched upon this, but I want to make sure we elaborate. What does it mean to work in an inclusive workplace?
Feeling that you have options, that you have options to have a conversation with people, that you have options on where you can maybe take your career, that you have options to continue to educate yourself, that you have options just to be. To be who you are, your identity, to be able to have a voice. And it may not be in policy, it may not be in procedures, but to sit at a table with a team and be able to say, hey, I see it differently, and not be dismissed. Being inclusive is not being dismissed. not saying you're overreacting, not saying that's not how you should be feeling. So, we love to tell somebody how they should be feeling. So being able to say, I respect your point of view. Though we may not be able to do that at this time, I'm going to keep this next to me as we continue to have these conversations. And if I don't, please remind me. I'm okay with that. It's being open to being outside of yourself. Okay? That's inclusive.
How do power and privilege impact business leadership?
Oh, well, I think we've seen a lot of documentaries on how power and privilege has done that, and they're usually in handcuffs going somewhere else, because people get excited. Power is just what it is. There's something in you when you can walk into a room and throw down what where you're from, and people go, "Ooh, really? You must really have made it if you have that title and you're coming from there." And then you have the privilege to walk in and say, "No, I prefer it to be like this." And someone goes, "Oh, you know where they're from." Or you're walking into a donor and they're like, I would prefer the board looks at it this way. And all of a sudden you're like, 10 million, have this conversation. It's understanding, though, that your power and privilege, you can also sometimes say no. No, we are not going to shift it because of that, because this is our values of where we stand. Power and privilege can also be, I'm going to write a grant, or I'm going to be able to do these things, or I know how to shift to make this change happen sooner than later. Power and privilege is being able to call on people and say, here's what I'm thinking. Are you ready to take this ride with me? And someone has the trust that you will use your power and privilege for good, for the betterment of the whole, as opposed to just what works for me and my folks and my circle. That's the difference.
I've got 3 more questions, and then we'll be throwing it to our audience. So if you can start putting in your questions in the chat box, that would be wonderful. What should diversity and inclusion not be?
Woo, performative. It should not be, this is what we're doing so that we can do a checkbox and keep moving. It should not be, oh, we need to do numbers so that we can fill out an equity report. We need to show something on the website. It should not be a bunch of photos, as I always say, of the people in the conference room. And they all, look diverse, and doggone well, nobody sits in that conference room. You don't have a conference room, and then none of those people actually work for you. It should not be throwing around, well, I have 2, because 2 or 1 of nothing of anyone is a start, but that's not it. That's not diversity. It should not be look at us. It should not be showboating. It should be built in where the people that are working there are your PR folks. They're the ones that go home and go, oh my God, do you not imagine this class? And I'm walking the campus and how I feel, and I have a voice, and things are happening. And I learned about even this culture the other day. I didn't even know, but they've given us a space to learn something new. That's what it should be. When we start separating folks and having all these little sidebar meetings and saying we're diverse and inclusive, again, that's going to be segregation within inclusion. Always try to have the conversation open. If you don't know, inclusion means being able to open the conversation with folks you may have never spoken to before. Okay? It's inviting people in to have the conversations. It's inviting people in just to understand, and being able to say, I'm trying to understand. But on the flip side, your Black and brown folks are not responsible for teaching everyone either. There's a difference of having a conversation on, please help me understand better what your needs are, or what your desires to be here, how we can build a better system for you, as opposed to tell me, okay, now, what's your culture? what it should be is opening up libraries for diversity of designers, and I'm talking from all ends, whether it's a building or whether it's a shirt, being able to see themselves when they go into a library or go into having conversations, to know that there is an opportunity to be one, to be the one, to be one of many, to be the one that gets to showcase their talent and their skills in a conversation that they do not feel that they now have to be performative to fit into a culture. And so I want to be clear, and can I shape that a little bit, because that may not make sense to some people.
Okay.
Black and brown folks sometimes cannot feel that they cannot be themselves, that they have to come into a culture and totally put on an act in order to fit in, the way that they talk, the way that they look, the way that they move, so that they are not labeled aggressive or too pushy. So building that inclusive environment where someone is who they are. We all are in limits, because some people say, well, don't we all have to show up and act a certain way? Yes, we do. That's called professionalism, 100%. There's a difference of being professional as of just saying, oh, can I wear my hair out today? What meeting am I having? How should I be dressed on this call? Because who's going to be on the call? Am I going to be perceived as something else if I ask 2 questions? These are thoughts, real thoughts that are coming through the mind. I want to be able to release some of that to say, can you work on what you're supposed to be working on without worrying how someone's going to perceive you every time you open your mouth? I know that may be hard for some people to hear, but it's just the reality of what it is. And so knowing that that is happening, how do you say, I want to see your talent? That is where I'm gonna go pop culture for a minute. What is it? Not American Idol. Is it American Idol that turns the chair? Which one turns the chair? That you hear the voice? The voice. You hear the voice. Thank you. The voice, where you hear the voice before you ever see the person. That's what I'm looking for one day. That there's not AI pulling out resumes or pulling out scholarships. That you see the work and go, we need this person as part of our faculty, or we need this student as part of our student body. Wow, look what they're bringing. As opposed to, where did they come from? To what are they bringing? And then how, when they get here, how do we enhance what they are coming in with? Oh, come on now. You're making me go on my tangents. You know how we are in the morning at 7 o'clock.
Here's my last final question. Then I'm going to throw it to our audience, specifically our students. I'd like to start with them. What advice would you give our students as they look to enter the workplace upon graduation?
Please know that your first job is not your last job. That's the first thing I'm going to say. I don't care. That's not about college. It's not your last job. You may not get the VP title you think you deserve. I understand we're talented. You may not get the senior or director. You may get assistant to the assistant on the side assistant gig, right? Walk in the door, and instead of being mad about the title that you have, learn how that entire business works from the mailroom to the boardroom, so that you get to take that power. No one takes that away from you as you continue to grow your career. So I'm going to say that again. Ask questions. If diversity and inclusion is important to your first move, ask in that interview, how do you continue to grow your employees? What are your, not only initiatives, because I just don't want to hear that you donate to this or you donate to that. Excuse me. How do you make sure that there's a pipeline for growth? Knowing that your VP title, again, may not come from some years from now. Knowing that you still don't have all the answers and that leadership does not have all the answers, that we are continually growing and changing, that it's going to be a stepping stone. When young people say to me, I'm stuck, I'm like, then you stuck yourself. No one else stuck you there. You should be there to go, how do I take everything somebody's going to give me and everything somebody's not going to give me by paying attention? Paying attention doesn't always mean asking questions. I remember watching even the stagehands, how they moved, how the company manager moved. How did they develop what they were doing that affected me? I learned what I liked and I learned what I didn't like. And I kept it in my back pocket for the opportunity for me to continue to grow, to say, when I have the power, privilege together, this is how I would like to run my department. And let's be clear, I've shifted since the first time I ever ran departments, because that's called we all grow as well, and we learn new tools. You're learning, you're learning, you're learning.
At this time, I'm going to give our Baker Scholar, Sahana Gupta, the opportunity to kind of monitor our chat and bring up the questions so that Leslie can answer them.
Hi, thank you so much for this lovely conversation that we've had today. I think there's a few questions that have come in. The first one is from Maria, and she wants to know what are some of the companies or organizations that you admire. And I will go on and add on to that based on the values that you have spoken about and touched about today. So please.
So I'm a little biased to this company. I do not work for them. I do not get a check from them. I'm just in love with them. And you're going to be surprised. There's a couple. So Mattel, Barbie doll, love them. Love what they're doing. Love, I don't know who is sitting in their conference room. It takes a moment to design dolls, to build dolls. That team, the way they are building the diverse and inclusive dolls is amazing. I'm in love with what they're doing. And that means that they have the right voices sitting at the table about wheelchair and color of skin and hair and careers. There's something going on there that's right. I'm going to say Ben and Jerry's. I'm going to say Ben and Jerry's because doing the George Floyd, after George Floyd, when companies start writing commitments, everybody wanted a Ben and Jerry commitment. And I was like, are you Ben and Jerry's? And they'll go, no. I'm like, do you do social justice on every day? And they'll go, no. I'm like, then you can't write a Ben and Jerry's statement. Ben and Jerry's has decided long ago that they were a social justice company that makes ice cream. And they stay true to that. And I appreciate that. And I had the privilege of, there was 3 keynote speakers for a conference. The opening, I was the middle, and then the president from Ben and Jerry's. And everyone was all hyped on mine until he gave out free ice cream. And I was like this, fine, you win. But to hear him, the passion for how they have built this. Social justice is who they are. Sodexo. You may not have heard of Sodexo. Sodexo is a packaging company, believe it or not, in the food industry. They're all over the world. How they have been able to take all of their global companies and keep them together to work together on projects, cross-pollinating that way, I think is amazing. Their commitment to the communities that they're in and to communities as whole, amazing. And then the last one, Kellogg's. Yep, the cereal people and all the things that they're doing. And if you know the part of their history, their owner was deaf in the ear. So when you see how they write those writable raps, when you can write on Rice Krispies, part of that's coming because he's bringing his disability with him and he knows that others has it. And so he's expanding that to others. So those are the companies that, again, I don't get paid from. I just love watching them.
Thank you so much. And also thank you to Maria for this question. Now we have Abigail, and she wants to know, how does one go about a situation where a colleague is not accepting of another colleague based on culture? So how would you solve this problem?
One, you can't fight people and tell them to think about something else. But if it was interfering with my work or just me, period, I would go to my manager first, whoever the manager is or whoever is in charge of that, and have a conversation that it's not that they're not accepting my culture, it is now affecting me. And is there a way that we can either have a conversation that is mediated? If there's something that is going on that they're making sly remarks or those microaggressions, how is there a way that we can sit down together? It's not something I want to approach on my own because I do not feel comfortable. If you feel comfortable saying it, then of course you can approach it one-on-one. But if you don't, then go to the next person that's responsible and say, can we sit down and have a mediation of a conversation? Because I don't want to go on this way, and I just need to understand or don't understand. So you have to decide how important it is to you and then what you would like to have done about it. And that's the way that I would approach it. Either direct if you're comfortable or to your next person. And if that person doesn't do something, that's where those options are that I also build into companies. Is it HR? If you're not comfortable with HR, is there a D&I committee? Take it to the DEI committee. Yeah, you take it till it's heard.
Thank you. Thank you for your
I hope that
advice.
helps.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay. We have now Hannah, and again, I think this would probably relate back to our question for the companies and organizations that you admire. But then she wants to know if you can give examples of corporate commitments and policies that have worked the best and what moved the needle on a large company scale.
So I worked with one company and they decided that they were going to take the checkbox off if you were a felon. And the reason that happened is because everyone in this company would have to go through background checks, regardless of what position you were in. And they realized if they kept the box on that was felon, they were losing some really good people. And they took that off and allowed the resumes to come in and speak on merit. And then from there, if someone made it through the next few processes, that background, of course, they're going to ask it someone, but that background check would determine how the conversation went, but they would not hold it against them if they felt that they were right for that. And I really applauded them for that because it was an industry that they didn't really need to think about that. I think some of the commitments where they say we're not just going to throw money at something, but how do we make sure? And so I'll give you an example of a company I'm working with right now. They're in the film industry, and they made a commitment that they would not only have Black and Brown and Indigenous voices as part of the film that were being selected for film festivals, but that there would always be a diverse committee judging the films, reviewing the films. And before that, I worked with them to go through how the committee sheets, the submission forms, that they were all inclusive language. I also helped them change their grading on how they were looking at films so it could be much more inclusive. So it wasn't just like, oh, we're going to have voices in the room. We need to make sure the entire pipeline of how voices can even get into the room, be submitted, is there. And then they also built in with another sponsor, if there's someone that does not have the dollar amount, especially this year, but we see a talented film, we will make sure that they're part of the festival. Get them in. So there's so many different layers and ways. Again, who is your community and what are you bringing people in your community to do? Then what are the ways that you can assure that you can open doors? I always say front door, back door, the window, and slide in. How do you get people in different ways? It doesn't always have to be the classic grant or we're going to commit to hire 50 people. Again, if you hired 50 people, 5 people, and they're not inclusive, the company culture is not right, you just check the box off. So it's building those different pipelines.
Thank you. I think we have the last question right now. No one else has dropped anything in, but we have a question from Christine. So she
Yes.
says, our students from FIT are traveling abroad for the first time to countries that do not have the same priorities on diversity as we do. They look, sound different from the rest of the people in the destination country. So what advice would you give the students to optimize the value of their experience there?
I'm going to give this advice to anyone that leaves America. You're no longer in America. So there, okay. I got to start off that way. So, one, research, do your language, put an app on your phone that translates, learn the first 5 words: hi, thank you, restroom, and always where you're staying. Have that written down. Okay, that's the first thing. Be prepared to try different foods. It's when you walk into another culture and, oh, that doesn't look like what I'm used to. Oh, but that doesn't sound like what I'm used to. There's chicken in every country. It's just called something different. Okay. Number one, you can get your hair done if there's an emergency. You can go to a dentist if there's an emergency. There's doctors. So it's about approaching that I'm going into a new experience. And if they stare, there's some countries where I had people staring at me. There was countries where people would not sit next to me on the bus, yet in the center of town, I was on their billboard. I was in their commercials about laundry detergent. But when I got on that bus, they would not sit next to me. I've gone into countries where people have asked me to touch my skin. She was 86 years old and she said, things are changing. Do I pull away or do I say, wow, she understands things are changing? And we held hands as we walked up the stairs together. So I'm saying these things because I want you to go with an open mind. In the book, I write a chapter about global diversity and inclusion. Their focus for most of Europe, Asia, is gender and disabilities. But even in Israel, it's Palestinian. It's starting to change and shift. So I spent time in Israel as an advocate and an activist. Nobody looked at me twice. Not twice. Didn't care. Everybody's busy. Some places are much more multicultural than what you think when you're visiting. When you're living there, that may be a different thing. But don't go with the attitude of, we're Americans and we want out this and asking for McDonald's. And there's probably one on every corner in most countries right now, unfortunately. Go try a crepe if you're going to Paris. Go try escargot. Go try the croque monsieur, which is a grilled cheese, okay? Go try these different things and just be open to be in the moment where you are. And if you're smart enough about it, that goes back to the power that you will bring back of the knowledge of your experience. And trust me, when you go for jobs and you tell people you have traveled, that you can look at culture a little bit differently, people want to know that. Employees want to know that you're not a one-track mind with a one-track culture.
Thank you so
Enjoy the
much for
moment.
your advice.
Sure.
I think I'm not sure if we're running out of time, but we do have one more question. Should I go ahead or?
We have
I'm
time.
okay if everyone else is.
Okay, so we have one question. With the current climate in mind, where do you see us as a society 10 years from now?
Oh boy, I wish I palm tree. No, let's think. I really hope, this is my hope, and so I don't want to get emotional because this is really important to me personally, that humanity of seeing each other for who we are as people will be what we look at first. Of course, the reality is that we see color, and I need people to see color. Don't not see color. Not seeing color is taking a piece of our identity, but we will not be judged by our color or our race or how we want to identify, but we will actually be in a better place that when we're hiring, when we're moving, it's, oh my God, you do that, I do this, let's do it together. And it's not having to go, well, let me see if I can get that approved because We don't usually mix cultures here. It will be like running in going, I found exactly who we're looking for. That is what I hope for. I see it slowly happening. I see that your generation and the next see color less, but I also need you to understand that social justice and racial justice, it's going to be a journey. We have to remember that the companies are still being led by older, mature folks. And so the shift there has to happen. So in 10 years, there will be hopefully much more diverse leadership places, that the pipelines will be open for talent, for skills, for the support that's needed. I hope. That's how I'm trying to work now.
All right, so we promised that Leslie was going to raffle off one book to one lucky student, autographed. So I hope everyone was taking notes and listening carefully. Leslie, you have the floor for the question. Here's how this is going to work. The first person who gets the correct answer in its entirety will be declared the winner. And then we will ask that you place your name and your major and your email address, your FIT email address, into the chat. And then we will have Louise who's the assistant to the dean, contact you with further and for more information, and we'll get that to you. All right?
But I
Is
have
everybody
to
ready?
throw something in.
Sure.
But wait, I have to throw something in because we weren't inclusive, because we invited alumni and we invited other FIT people, students, right, that are no longer students. So they won't have a FIT email address. So therefore, you have to put your email address in, period. See, I'm always thinking inclusive. With that said, but those are the little things. Those are the little things that are big things. So the question is, what
Everybody ready?
What are the 4 pillars I believe you need to have to make a successful company? What were the 4 pillars? I'm not looking at the chat. I'm not going to. Oh, someone got it.
We have Hannah with the answer along with her email.
Yep. Hannah got it first. Who's Hannah?
She
Congratulations.
was quick. That was great.
I don't know what you clearly understand your own writing too, because I would have been like, wait, what did I write? I hope you enjoyed the
Thank
book,
you.
Hannah. Thank you.
I'm really excited. I really enjoyed this. I'm
Thank
alumni
you.
as well.
Oh, well, see? Thank you for joining today. I appreciate it. We'll make sure we get that out to you.
Amazing.
Although we
Thanks.
do have time for maybe one more question. Anyone have a burning question they'd like to ask?
I think Dean Mayer had a question dropped in the chat. And it was on company culture. How do you see the role of colleges, and how do you see the role of both students and faculty in bridging the gaps?
Wonderful. So it's funny because I'm working with some schools, so I'm actually attempting to do this as we speak. It always starts with leadership. It always starts with the buy-in, what I like to say with leadership, that they feel that it's important. And once leadership has these meetings with faculty to explain this is important, with the students, we're going to be building this and we're going to need you to be part of the build. And so all of those segments have to understand what's going on at the same time. And that this is something that's important to you. Then from there, you are going to begin to have those conversations on what it will take for faculty to do it, to build it, right? You do have some separate conversations in the beginning. And then you come together and say, this is what students are desiring. This is what we know we can do as leadership and as faculty. And now we're going to find out what's the best path to actually start executing this. So there's assessments that need to take place. again, because company culture for leadership and company culture for or school culture, community culture, environment culture. Working with schools, I now know they say environment culture when you're dealing with, it's not always the same for everyone. So those assessments need to happen. The right questions need to be answered, and the examination before you start building it. It's a process, but it can be done. I know it sounds and looks very daunting. It is, but it can be done.
No, so thank you. And it's an important topic right now for FIT. So I appreciate your input on that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invite to be here and to speak with the students. And, you know, Elena and I at 7 o'clock in the morning are crazy enough to be sending news articles to each other. And like, did you see this? But there's not enough context to this. How's this going to play out? What's going on? And so we have these discussions all the time. So it was really great to be able to share one with you.
We've got time for one more question. Anyone want to type in a question or turn on their mic and ask it to Leslie?
And it can be about anything. It can even be about career path. It can be about anything.
Mm-hmm. Take the opportunity while you have.
Okay, you know what's going to happen. Get ready for the emails after the fact. I've been thinking. Can you ask her this for me? It always happens.
Leslie, can you share your social media handles? I think that might be one of the ways in which the students can communicate with you or anyone who is on this event call.
Absolutely. So yes, I probably should put it in the chat, but that's going to take me longer because it's singing. At the Cavu Group, THECAVU Group, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm under Leslie Short. You can always reach out to me there. My website is www.thecavugroup.com. There's a form that you can email me from there. Feel free to follow me. Feel free to make comments. I love it.
And the book again is called Expand Beyond Your Current Culture, Diversity and Inclusion for CEOs and Leadership. And it is available at the FIT bookstore. So again, you can get it directly at the FIT Barnes & Noble bookstore.
Support the bookstore. I'm gonna say that. Support the bookstore. It's important.
Well, with that being said, I think at this time, I again need to thank Dean Mayer once again for this wonderful opportunity to moderate this very important discussion today. Of course, I need to also thank the assistant to the dean, Louise Horgan, who was fantastic in helping this event possible. Ashley in the office, who helped us with the flyer design. Of course, our Baker Scholar, Sahana Gupta, for monitoring today's chat. And of course, a very special thank you to my dear friend Leslie Short in engaging us in this hour-and-a-half long, important conversation. I'm Professor Elena Romero, and I hope all of you will enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And of course, spring break. All of us need that much needed break to refresh and rejuvenate as we begin the second half of the semester. Thank you, everyone. And again,
Thank you. I made it to FIT.
Yay! Thank you so much, Leslie and Elena. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for attending. It was a